Breaking Bad is one of those TV shows everyone knows.
What Vince Gilligan did was change the construct of what was possible in series television.
However, there is so much more to this series than meets the regular eye. So today I want to look at everything from a totally different angle. The details that fly under the radar and honestly deserves way more attention.
Oh, zap! Somebody got got, yo!
And I'm going to do this through 4 different perspectives, with everything from characters, plot points, to small moments that change everything.
Hello, Carol.
By the end, you're either gonna be mad and disagree with me for what I've had to say, or you might end up with a brand new appreciation for stuff you thought you already understood.
What the hell is this?
Hey.
Veggie bacon. We're watching our cholesterol.
Walter White Jr., or as he likes to be called,
Flynn?
Yeah.
is one of those characters that plays a much bigger role than he gets credit for. But at the same time, I still think he was underutilized in the series, and this creates an interesting thought. Something that goes way deeper than just showing up for breakfast.
Did I mention Walt's son loves breakfast?
You did, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
From the beginning, the purpose of Junior is to create, for a lack of a better word, a middleman. A character that holds this family together from a writing perspective and from an emotional point of view. His presence creates a unique situation that in the end motivates characters to do bad things for what they view as good reasons. And this idea of details that are interconnected can be linked to a lot more in this video. Actually, you could say that is one of the main themes of Breaking Bad as a series, but more on that later.
Screw it.
If we move back to Junior, his innocent nature as a result of how he moves and talks brings a lot of vulnerability to his character, and this makes his most powerful scenes very memorable.
You're like ready to give up. God, what if you gave up on me, huh? For me personally was when Walt Jr. finds Walt and me and Brian had a conversation that night.
He's looking right at me. But I can't even be sure that he knows who I am.
It just kind of always reminded me of just life and death and all that.
This rattling sound, like if you were shaking an empty spray paint can.
And I think it's a good duality of what we had of Breaking Bad and life and death and growth, and then that was that scene, so yeah.
I don't want that to be the memory you have of me when I'm gone.
Remembering you that way wouldn't be so bad.
These moments really highlight the best side of the character, showing how Flynn makes Walter feel normal, like a typical father with his son. He brings motivation and heart to an otherwise monstrous man, which becomes especially important towards the end of the series, when the dynamic is completely turned upside down.
What the hell is wrong with you? We're a family!
Without all these everyday and regular scenes, this showdown would never have worked as well as it did. Watching this poor teenager realize what his father has become does so much for the audience, but even more for the character of Walter White.
He put a knife on my mom, he attacked her, he's dangerous. I think he might have killed somebody. Why are you still alive? Why don't you just die already? Just die.
By the end of the series, Junior isn't a fully fleshed out character, rather a symbol of innocence. Something even the actor himself has acknowledged, noting that he thought his character would die due to the lack of dialogue in the script.
I'm losing lines and then these guys show up and I'm like, wait, I'm next. Yeah.
I do wish he had more to do in this series than just sit on the sidelines. RJ Mitt's performance is genuinely unique, and honestly, so is the character. His story revolves so much around cars, which makes me think, why didn't they give him a storyline behind the wheels? A crash or something, where he gets pretty badly injured after receiving his brand new, very expensive car. It would have forced Walt to really confront the consequences of his choices, while adding even more tension between him and Skyler.
I am the one who knocks.
Comment below if you have any good idea of how Flynn could have been more involved. Now let's move on to the second perspective. The plane crash storyline from Season 2 is one of the most controversial and discussed events of the entire show. It's been called anything from unrealistic to unnecessary, but today I want to explain why it's absolutely brilliant, and has a much more symbolic role than what you might think, starting with this scene right here.
Otherwise harmless substances can interact in a way that generates enormous bursts of energy.
In episode 6 of season 1, Walter is teaching chemistry. He's talking about the subject's central concept, in that once certain things are set in motion, the reaction must be complete, and therefore the end result is inevitable.
The faster they undergo change, the more violent the explosion.
Basically, that one small decision can lead to huge consequences. Season 2 starts by foreshadowing the chaos to come, how multiple threads begin their journey toward a single explosive finale. If we overlook everything that happened in Season 1, you could say that Walt's decision to expand his territory, of getting more and more greedy, is the beginning of all of this.
This business.
Jesse buys the house with drug money, which leads to him meeting Jane, and eventually to Walt meeting her as well.
Can I help you?
As Walt becomes increasingly reckless and controlling, he leaves Jesse more vulnerable, creating the conditions that allow Jesse and Jane to find a liking for one another. But why does this matter? Of course, we all know that the end result is the tragic passing of this girl. However, the real point is what the writing is trying to show us. To put it in a simple way, from the character's point of view, every single event up to the plane crash seems random, even coincidental, and it's designed like this for a reason, in that it mirrors the larger motif of Walter White himself, or more accurately, Heisenberg. Let me explain. The crash isn't about Walt directly causing it. Rather, it's a reminder that, just like in chemistry, there are always ramifications, and certain chain reactions will inevitably lead to tragedy. Walt's choices don't always trigger the exact outcome, but they often guarantee that chaos will follow. The whole situation with Jane is a great example, because Walt might never have gone to her and Jesse's apartment if he hadn't had that brief conversation with her father, Donald Margolis. Donald himself would not have been there if it wasn't for the fight with her daughter, and that fight would never have happened if Jane hadn't met Jesse. Tragically, the advice Donald gives, never give up on your family, is exactly what sets in motion the events that destroy his own. And ironically, all of this trauma and heartbreak began from the man he gave the advice to.
Can't give up on them. Never. I mean, what else is there?
I think it's self-preservation, but I think, because she threatened to expose him, but I don't even think that, I think that was like, it was 1/4 self-preservation. I think it was 3/4 saving Jesse.
The accident itself, with the eye and the purple stuffed animal, is obviously unrealistic. You could even argue that the way it was teased was a bit misleading, but I would also say that it's a very clever analogy for the series as a whole. It's a reminder that every selfish, harmful decision, beginning the moment Walt asks Jesse to cook, sets in motion a chain of events that leads to total destruction.
You want to cook crystal meth?
What I admire about this show and the writing of Walter White is that his core belief so perfectly mirrors his environment. He thinks the real world functions like chemistry, where outcomes can be controlled with enough precision. He constantly tries to outsmart the events around him, but the harder he tries, the more he destroys every life he touches. And no matter what, he can't for the life of him understand how it's his fault. In the end, it's that very hubris that defines Heisenberg.
But you know what, Walt? Someone has to protect this family from the man who protects this family.
The plane crash is a very extreme illustration of this, but I think it's highly creative, unique, and a deep storyline that rewards people for paying attention.
But they would look at me as if I were Todd. So they were looking at me
like, really scared, and I had no idea why.
What's your name?
Todd.
Breaking Bad has given us so many awesome villains. You could say that each of them represents a part of Heisenberg's evolution, beginning with Tuco's impulsivity, the twins' loyalty and conviction, and ultimately Gus' perfectionism and anger. Todd, however, represents the villain you just can't understand, and that's what makes him so terrifying.
No! No! No!
I'm going to dive into both the series and the film El Camino now, so spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't seen the movie yet. And the reason I want to shed some more light on Todd is because of his unique nature, as well as how it connects to the last part of both Jesse's and Walt's story in such a brilliant way.
We never would have been able to catch him. I was thinking on my feet. I saw a threat and I took care of it the only way that I could.
A threat. The kid was waving at us.
I remember thinking that Uncle Jack's gang wasn't on the same level as the Gus Fring saga. I mean, that part of the series is so iconic.
Well? Get back to work.
However, after rewatching the show, it has made me appreciate this criminal bunch and Todd specifically a lot more. The gang, they're of course not calculated the way Gus was. Instead, they are what happens when you strip out all value from human life, which is exactly where Walt's story ends.
Not something you do yourself, huh? Jesse is like family to me.
It's a striking illustration of just how far down our protagonist has fallen, his nemesis now being dirty, evil and corrupt neo-Nazis. And somehow, amid all these extreme characters, we find Todd. It's the mix of his almost innocent quote-unquote normal demeanor and Jesse Plemons' incredible acting that creates such a stark contrast with what he really is, a cold-blooded sociopath.
You wanna say a few words?
This is only getting enhanced in El Camino, where we see this dude listening to 70s love songs, having a pastel-colored Easter egg apartment, and the fact that he actually kept the spider the poor kid left behind in the beginning of season 5. He isn't a archetype or a copy of any other fictional villain I can think of. He is so bizarre, and I can confidently say that Todd didn't keep that spider as a killer trophy, rather because he probably thought it looked cool. And perhaps that's the best way to describe this character. Sinisterly naive. Ultimately, the part of El Camino I enjoyed the most was the acting between Jesse and Todd, because the difference is impossible to ignore. Todd is basically Jesse's complete opposite. He's unbreakable, he doesn't show real emotion, and he seems to be missing some core human function altogether. And circling back to Jesse, this contrast is exactly what leads us to the next perspective.
Jesse, last time you seemed pretty down about your job at the laundromat. Let me ask you something. If you had the chance to do anything you wanted, what would you do?
This is the middle of season 3. The episode is called Kafkaesque, which is a term that says a situation that is almost surreal in a bad way. And this is actually a great description for the tragic nature of Jesse Pinkman. So in this perspective, I want to focus on an often overlooked scene that, within 5 minutes, distills the emotional core of this character with remarkable clarity.
I don't know. I guess I would make something. I loved him. I loved that kid so much. I cared for him. To me, he felt like a real person.
From the moment we meet him all the way to the end, Jesse gets manipulated by everyone. That's why the final moment between Walt and Jesse is so good, because he decides to follow his own voice.
Then do it yourself.
In this meeting, Jesse gets to discuss this inner voice of his dream life. If he could have anything or do anything, what would that be?
I took this Votech class in high school.
He goes on talking about woodworking, the class he took, the annoying teacher that ultimately made him redo his work. And somewhere in the middle of this story, you begin to see Jesse's eyes come to life.
He wasn't exactly saying it sucked. He was just asking me honestly, is that all you got? So I started from scratch. I made another. then another. By the end of the semester, by like box number 5, I had built this thing. You should have seen it. It was insane.
Suddenly there is an innocent teenager sitting in that room, talking about the box he made.
I built it out of Peruvian walnut with inlaid zebra wood. It was fitted with pegs, no screws. I sanded it for days until it was perfect.
What happened to the box?
I gave it to my mom.
And you think that's the end of the story, but then the truth comes out.
You know, I didn't give the box to my mom. I traded it for an ounce of weed.
It hits you like a bullet train. I can't quite explain why this particular moment among all of Jesse's tragic scenes stays with me, but what it does so well is to paint the picture of what this guy could have been. The life on the other side of all these terrible decisions. It displays that somewhere in his heart, there is a warm person that once was completely normal.
You don't have to do this.
In the end, that's the paradox of Jesse as a character. You sympathize with him because of how he is treated by Walt and everyone around him. You see the potential he has, yet it's always his own decisions that put him in a place of no return. You can't deny that he liked to play the bad guy. He just really hated becoming one. Very much the opposite to Walt.
I was alive.
The evolution of Jesse was one of the highlights of the series for me, watching Aaron Paul absolve this character to the point that he even dreamed about him.
I know it was just a character I played, but when Jane died, like, it broke my heart because it was part of me.
I think it's the actor's brilliant performance that also gives me such a mixed reaction to Jesse's ending. Personally, I feel like the writing went a bit too far. Seeing him chained in the dark dungeon was heartbreaking enough. Then on top of that, watching them kill his girlfriend and threaten that child, it was just devastating. El Camino gave him a proper send-off, but to be honest, I didn't think that film did anything to enhance his character. The one scene that really stuck with me as a moment of genuine character evolution is this one.
I've gone where the universe takes me my whole life. It's better to make those decisions for yourself.
Let me know if you agree with me on these different perspectives, and tell me your most unique opinion about Breaking Bad in the comments. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.